Hello, we are live. I'm Johnathan Rankin, and this is our very first live broadcast. This is what we're calling Retirement Intel. It's going to be our weekly show. And so I'm happy for whoever's watching this here. We're going to be here every single week on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Central Time. So we got a packed show for you today. And I appreciate you being here. If you've caught any of our other videos, we try to update on an ongoing basis, but this is a way for us just to have this conversation and a dialogue around retirement weekly. So that's what we're here to do. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So, bear with us. This is our first one live. So we're going to try to make it through with new technology and new setup and all that. But I think we're ready to go, and I'm excited for this. So if you have questions or anything like that, you can throw them into the chat there. We're here to make this a dialogue, but as long as you're there, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of these. But we're going to dig right in, and really where we're going to go ahead and start here is, what's going on in the overall markets. We'll kind of start there. Obviously, it's been a little bit more of a volatile past couple of weeks. We're starting to see, a lot more volatility, especially in some of the big tech names that have led the market over the past couple of years. And especially this week, this is a very big week for earnings. We just saw about an hour ago Microsoft released their earnings, and they're down in the aftermarkets because they missed in a portion of their earnings. They actually exceeded revenue expectations, but they missed in a portion of their earnings. And so now we're starting to see that stock pull back. And this is really an important part of the overall market because they've been the leaders for a long period of time, really since the end of 2022, when ChatGPT got announced. It's really been this AI craze. And that's really what's led as we've seen, this market develop. And so, I came across a very interesting chart by Richard Bernstein Advisors that just shows the percentage of stocks that have outperformed the index. And, this goes through July 5th of this year. But going back to 1990, we're at the lowest percentage of stocks that have outperformed the index. And that's just really telling, and it kind of shows the level of concentration that we're seeing right now, which is why a week like this, with earnings being on the docket for Microsoft and a lot of other major tech companies, I believe Apple's set to release, Amazon, we've got Meta, or Facebook as it used to be known. They're all set to release this week. And we also have the Fed meeting. So it's really a big week. It seems like everybody's anticipating that the Fed's going to, cut rates at some point by September. We're not expecting one this meeting, but likely before the election. There's, a lot of anticipation that we're going to see a rate cut. Right now, the bond market is pretty much priced in specifically that we're going to see a rate cut in September. But, it's a little bit more of a volatile period. I think we're going to see volatility continue to pick up, especially as we enter into the prime election season, getting into that September, October, November timeframe. But, this is not as we know, this is not a stock market show. This is not a show that's here for the markets. Our goal here is to really be talking about retirement. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to keep these two retirement topics. We might do a little bit on the markets, just kind of like we did, just to talk about if there's any major themes. But really, this is a retirement show. It's a retirement channel. So, if you have things that want questions answered or anything that's on your mind, let us know. We're here to always take some feedback. But where we're going to start today is a very interesting article that I came across, that really ties in the intersection of what we're seeing right now on the political front, with the election coming out, as well as what we're seeing since I've been in this, industry. I started my career almost 20 years ago. And ever since I can remember, there's always been questions on whether or not Social Security is going to be around or go out of business or, essentially be bankrupt and benefits are not going to be payable. So I've heard this for a very long period of time. And there was an article that was released by Barron's that talked about how the left and the right and how they're both wrong about Social Security. So on top of that, without this being this is not a stock market show, it's also not a political show. So we're not going to be getting into who's right or who's wrong, but really going through the thought process of each of those. And what I liked about this article is that it broke down really where the problem started. I think over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of pointing the finger and the blame of is it the left's problem? Is it the right's problem? Who created this issue? And the reality is the issue was created in the 1970s. So this wasn't a Bush issue or an Obama issue or a Trump issue or a Biden issue. This has been an issue that was created well before most people watching this were actually thinking about Social Security. It was back in the 1970s where, that's when they started to actually increase the cost of living adjustment on Social Security. So that's really where things started. And, the cost of living adjustment at the time exceeded the increases that workers' tax could actually pay for. And that's what started that financial instability. And so, even since then, for years, the trustees of the program have been talking about how there needs to be some sort of reform. And yet there's never been anything done by lawmakers. And that makes sense. I mean, if you're a politician, you have to appeal to your demographic. You have to appeal to your voters. And if we look back, at the midterm election in 2022, 64% of the voters were over the age of 50. So if 64% of the people that are the ones that are voting are the ones that are actually going to be, utilizing Social Security, sooner than, the younger generation, well, then if you're the politician that needs those votes, are you really going to try to enact a policy that's going to harm your largest voting demographic? And so, to fix Social Security, they mentioned in the article that they would have to increase payroll taxes immediately by 27% on everybody. This isn't just the rich. This is everybody across the board would have to see an increase of 27% on their payroll taxes. I doubt that is going to be the way they're going to fix this. And they talk about some of the political myths that we've seen. How on the left side, they believe that it's because of stagnant benefits, and that the right is going to be cutting Social Security, and that you have to tax the rich to solve this shortfall. And then on the other side, and on the right wing side, you've got the fact that this is blaming illegal immigration or fraud or foreign aid. And so these are the different narratives that are creating this conflict that we're seeing. And the question comes down to who's right. Well, the reality is neither of them. Nobody's right on that. The issue isn't because of any of those things. It's because of demographic changes and the fact that in the 70s, benefits growth exceeded how much money they're taking in. So the question comes down to how do we fix this? And so the fix is going to be somewhere in the middle. We're going to have to see some sort of benefit, growth moderating, where there's going to have to be some change to that. We're going to probably see some sort of eligibility age being adjusted. And eventually, yes, there's going to need to be some sort of additional tax revenue. How that's figured out is anybody's guess. I know the last time I looked into this, there were about 4 bills that were in Congress, but nothing's been, actually enacted or changed. I think it's going to be a long time before we actually see any, change here, because as I mentioned, this is a very big hot button that is going to impact millions and millions of people. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly how this gets fixed, or whether or not it does. And so it's, to me, it's one of those things where when I look at Social Security, do I think it's going to be bankrupt? No. Do I think it's going to go away and you're not going to receive any benefits? No. In fact, even if you look at the Social Security's website, they will actually show that even if nothing is done, there's enough tax revenue coming in that's going to pay somewhere around 80% of scheduled benefits. Now, that's not what most people are counting on, but it's a lot better than nothing. And so, yes, there's going to be some reform. However, I think it's going to be something that's going to be somewhere in the middle of tax increases, benefit reduction, and we've heard of possible means testing. So there's a lot of different ways they can do this. We just need someone to step up and do this, because frankly, I'm tired of seeing all the headlines every single year about Social Security going bankrupt, because those are scare tactics. It's not going bankrupt. It's just got some issues that need to be worked out. So, but we'll kind of leave it there on the Social Security front. The next thing that I want to talk about is the recent change that we saw the IRS come out with. So, over the past week, it was a little over a week ago, the IRS actually came up with their final revisions to the Secure 2.0 Act. So they finally updated all of the different rules and regulations around that act. And so it's been a little time coming, because let's just be honest that that was passed a while ago. And you know, one of those rules that came out of that was the ability to tap into your 401k or your retirement account. And there was an article by the Wall Street Journal, and we'll link to all the articles in the description below after this video, so you can come back and if you want to read those. But really, what this is about is getting access to your 401k or your retirement account if you just have an IRA, and being able to tap into $1,000 really on demand with no penalty and no interest. And so this is different than a 401k loan, where you're essentially borrowing within a 401k. So, which means that the assets have to be held within a 401k. There is an interest rate. You have to, there's a lot of different provisions on payback schedules, things like that. Whereas in the $1,000 that you can tap into at any point, there's the eligibility is defined by yourself. So you get to self-define the emergency, and you don't actually have to give any specifics. You could just say, I want to take $1,000 out of my account, and you could do that. The key is that you have to pay back that amount within 3 years. If not, you do owe taxes on that it'll be considered at that point a distribution, and there's only one emergency withdrawal per year. And one thing that I'm looking for more clarity on is whether or not the withdrawal is something where if you can do one withdrawal per year, but if you haven't repaid that in year 2 or year 3, can you take another? That's something that I'm still looking into getting more clarity on, because nobody's really talking about that part of it. But those are the rules around it. So the question is whether or not, is this a good thing or a bad thing? There's a lot of different ways to look at this. On the good side, this can be that helpful hand when emergency fund is not available. For a lot of savers, they have to make the choice. Do I save my 401k? Do I tap in or save into just a savings account for an emergency fund? So this is a way to still divert money pre-tax into a 401k, and at some point use that as that emergency fund. But on the bad side, this is creating that slippery slope. You're creating that habit of being able to tap into what's usually defined as a very long-term account. A 401k or retirement account is meant to be saved and really not touched until you're in the retirement phase. But if you're starting to get into the habit, what might start out as $500 turns into $1,000 at some point, then maybe the need for a little bit more. And it's always thought of that the money is just there to tap into. And so, the other side of it is, this does create the foundation of positive saving habits. And when I look at, nowadays, the auto enrollment that's happening within 401ks, we always talk about the first place you want to save as soon as you get a job and start making money is going to be in a 401k, especially if they have a match. So this allows you to, forego that emergency savings and just start getting that match immediately, knowing you could tap into it. So it does create those positive habits early, but when you're taking the money out, you're not letting it grow. And so, this kind of goes back to the philosophy of, whether or not a 401k loan is a good thing or it's a bad thing. Same thing with tapping into your retirement account. Is it a good or bad thing? The way I look at this is, if you have the discipline to not continue doing it, then I think it's a good thing. If you know yourself, and everybody knows their own personality, whether or not they have the discipline to just say, what, this was a true emergency. I'm going to, just tap into this one time for, a washing machine or whatever it is that needs fixed or needs help with. But if it's something that, over time becomes more of a habit, then that's where I think it really becomes an issue. And so, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but I think that that's something where, to me, you just want to make sure that's not a habit of something that you're getting into. So, that's, I think we kind of touched on quite a bit there within that new rule. So we'll kind of move on from there. There was a recent article that was out that talked about this major 401k rollover mistake. And I think that's something that, we see a lot of people who have moved jobs or, went from one career to another career, and they had a retirement account and they rolled it into an IRA. So it's a very common thing. There's actually more money in IRAs than there are in 401ks. And so when when people are moving money from a 401k to an IRA, there's this major mistake that's happening when they're doing that. And this study by Vanguard really highlighted what that mistake is. And so that's really what we're going to touch on next is, when we see, this major mistake of going from that 401k to an IRA that's costing retirement savers billions. And what this mistake is that they're moving money from a 401k that's invested into an IRA, and it's being left in cash because, a lot of people are under the assumption that when you move the funds from an already invested 401k into an IRA, that it's going to be automatically invested as well. But that's not the case. An IRA, if you're doing it on your own as a self-directed IRA, it's going to be up to your discretion on how you allocate those funds. If you're working with a financial advisor, well, then, likely they're going to be the ones that are going to allocate that IRA for you. But what's happening is there are, thousands and thousands of people and millions of dollars that are just being left on the sidelines in cash. And really, this is more prevalent with younger investors. So as you can see this chart here, that shows how long they're keeping some of these things in cash. The 20 to 29-year-olds, on average are keeping their money in cash for, between 5 and 7 years. And so the good thing is that for those that are close to retirement, those that are, either 50 to 60 or even 60 and older, it's, less than half, but it's still quite a bit of individuals that are keeping money in cash. And so, what Vanguard showed was that those that rolled money from an IRA in their 20s held on to cash for 7 years. And, it's only 5 months for IRA for those that are over the age of 55. So this is a very big deal because you're missing out on, any sort of long-term investment returns, especially for a 7-year period. Over a 7-year period, we're going to see, ups and downs in the market, but there are very few times has there been a rolling 7-year period where we've seen, a negative rate of return. The long-term historical average of the market tends to, go from the bottom left of the chart to the top right. And so you want to be able to use this money to save and to grow for your long-term retirement. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that people are making, is they're leaving money in cash. And it brings up the question, should there be auto enrollment in diversified portfolios like there is in a 401k, but should they extend that to an IRA? And this is really where the conversation gets interesting because, I personally don't think that there should be an auto enrollment, because a lot of people who move the money from a 401k to an IRA, typically they have an idea that they're moving that money. There just needs to be more education around the fact that if you're moving it into a self-directed IRA, that the money is going to be, self-directed. You have to be the one to put that money to work unless you're working with a financial advisor. And so I do see that, there's benefit to having an auto enrollment, just like there is in a 401k. But if you went through the steps of creating the IRA, actually moving the money yourself from the 401k to the IRA, it's important to make sure you take that next step in, actually putting that to work. Because, for those that are, between 20 and 29, that the study showed that kept in there for 7 years, during that 7-year period, you had to have gotten an account statement. So there had to be something showing you this money is not growing or sitting in cash. And so that's where I think there is a little bit of responsibility of the investor to make sure that they know what they're invested in. And so, because I think that having some sort of auto enrollment can create issues there are some people who maybe for some reason don't want to be invested. Maybe they've allocated this portion of money to something that's, within their lifestyle, that they know they're going to be spending this money, and they don't want to actually allocate it to something in there, at that time. So, I don't think it's something that we should be forcing people to go into some sort of automated fund. I think it's something that people should have, like I said, that responsibility on their own to put that money to work. And if you're in the process of rolling money from a 401k to an IRA, or you've done that and you don't know where it's invested and you have questions, we'd be happy to help with that. There's a link in the description below. You can schedule some time with a member of our team. We'd be happy to chat with you. But let's move on. We're going to go on to some kind of lighter topics that we found. So, one of those is this retiree shopping list. And there was a there was an article that came out that was it was a pretty interesting one that was by it was it was by Forbes, and it was 6 things that you should pay for when you're nearing retirement. And so I think I look at these lists and go, okay, how accurate are these? And are these things that you should actually be purchasing, or are these things that, are just generalities? And if that's the case, I like to start the conversation to figure out, okay, well, what things should you be thinking about as you're nearing retirement? So we'll kind of go through these. So the first thing that they talk about that you should be, essentially paying for is 6 months of income needs. I get that this makes sense. It kind of goes back to the bucket approach of having that short-term, bucket of reserves that you're going to be tapping into over the next couple of years. Do I think you need to have 6 months of income just sitting in a checking account? I don't believe that's necessary, but you want to make sure that you at least have an earmarked amount that's set aside that okay, this is the amount that we're going to be using. That doesn't necessarily need to be in your checking account in cash. It could be something that's in some sort of short-term reserves, at least earning some sort of interest. They talk about the next thing is paying off credit card balances. Now, yes, you should, ideally when you're getting to retirement, the goal is to have 0 credit cards. Those credit cards have some of the highest interest rates. That's going to outpace most investment returns depending on, what credit card you have. And so, yes, it's a good practice to try to get your credit cards paid off. If that's something that, if you have a large credit card balance, I think it would be appropriate to start thinking about whether or not that's the right time to retire. And I know that retirement's not always something that people get to choose. Sometimes because of health issues or family or you name it, they're forced in retirement. But yes, trying to get those credit cards paid off is going to be very important. They talk about home improvements. This is a big one because one of the things that they mention that I think a lot of people forget is while you're still working, you have an income that you can now go out and actually still get a loan. Where it becomes an issue is when you stop working and that income goes away, it's hard to get a bank to lend you money. Yes, it can be done, but if you don't have, steady streams of income in retirement, it's a little bit more challenging. So using this time to, while you're working, to do any home improvements, making sure that if you need to tap into any sort of, credit facilities, whether that's, home equity line of credit or, as we'll get to here in just a bit, a couple other ways, other loans that you might need to take. It's a great time to start thinking ahead on those things because with that income going away, it can create an issue around, getting qualified for those loans. This one, I kind of disagree a little bit. The first year of travel funds, or retirement travel funds, I think it makes sense to be thinking ahead about where you want to travel. But for a lot of people that I've seen that enter retirement, they don't have that first year mapped out of here's where I'm going to go. Here's exactly what I'm going to do. Yeah, it'd be nice if you plan ahead and you had that set aside. But, I think it's important to have kind of a travel budget just set up in your retirement plan, knowing that, yeah, at some point you might be tapping into this or you might, you want to have funds that are earmarked for that. But there might be travel that just kind of pops up out of nowhere, especially if you have family all throughout the country. You might want to spend time to go visit family and it might cost you a little more than you were expecting. It'd be nice if everybody planned ahead, but I think building some buffer into your retirement plan is important, especially when it comes to travel and healthcare. But, having that first year of, retirement travel funds just set aside, sitting in a checking account, I think that, that's not as practical in real life as opposed to, kind of creating a list. Purchasing a new or late model vehicle. This goes back to the, tapping into credit facilities. It's important to get any sort of line of credit, auto loan, home equity line of credit, mortgage, while you've got a salary because it's a lot easier to qualify for. And the last thing they talk about is investing in equipment for hobbies. I don't know how, what hobbies there are that are extremely expensive. If you got an expensive hobby, my guess is that you've probably already invested in some of the equipment for that. So yeah, it'd be nice if you wanted to go on a shopping spree right before you retired. But once again, that's usually not practical. I thought of a few others that I think, should belong on this list. As you're getting ready for retirement, things that you might want to look at buying or spending money on. The first is doing an assessment of your life insurance. And a lot of the reasons around that are because most people are covered by some sort of employer health insurance program, usually within your benefits. And once you end your employment, that life insurance goes away. So if there's any need for life insurance, you want to make sure you do that before you retire, before you're not covered by any sort of plan. And then the last one is estate planning. And same thing, a lot of employers nowadays offer a legal benefit as a part of their benefits. And usually it's not that expensive. It's usually, I think the last I looked into it, it was $10 to $15 every pay period. It really wasn't, that much, but within that benefit, you can actually use that benefit to get a pretty basic, estate plan done. You can get your wills, your trusts, powers of attorneys, all that most people need. That's not a complicated, estate plan. You can get it done utilizing that benefit. So it's a great time to really think through, if you have that benefit or if your employer offers that, or as we're coming up to open enrollment, let's say you're retiring at the end of next year or sometime next year, this open enrollment, I would check to see if your employer offers that and utilize this time over the next year until you retire to get that estate plan done if you haven't done so already. So those are, the kind of the 6, and I added 2, so we'll make it 8 things that you should be thinking about for retirement. So, those lists are always, pretty interesting because I think you could take some of that stuff with a grain of salt. Some of the things just really make you think. I think that's the purpose of some of those articles. And that's really what we're going to be kind of going through is, as we expand on this channel and this show is, really just talking and opening the dialogue around different things you should be thinking about. And with that, we're going to touch on the last thing today, which is really my favorite thing that comes out every single year. I don't know why I enjoy this list, but it's the best and worst states to retire in. This is something that I find fascinating that they even come up with this list. I often question why they come up with this list, but they do. And it's, like I said, it's always fun to go through. So we're going to go through the top 5 best and the top 5 worst states. Actually, we're going to start with the worst. And, I found this article in Newsweek. Like I said, we'll link to everything in the description below. But how did they rate these places? Well, affordability, overall well-being, cost and quality of healthcare, weather, and crime rates. So that's how these were ranked, or in really what the survey was based on. But the thing about these type of lists that I always find fascinating is that they change every single year. So I wonder who's basing their retirement and where they're going to live off of this list. I guess it's good to think about and it's good to go through, but my guess is that most people are not basing their where they're actually retiring on this list. So we'll get started here with the we're going to go through, like I said, the bottom 5. So coming in at number 45. So this is the number 46 with an affordability ranking of 26. Let's see here. So we got an affordability ranking of 26. Cost and quality of healthcare is 36. A well-being rank of 37. A weather rank of 48. So not great weather. And a crime rank of 18. So the number 46, bottom 5, is North Dakota. So if you're planning on moving to North Dakota, maybe you might want to rethink that at number 46. Number 47, has the worst affordability rank at number 50. It's got actually top 6 in quality and cost of healthcare. The well-being rank is 15, weather rank is 12, and the crime rank is 38. So this probably landed in the bottom simply for the fact that it's the most, it's got the worst affordability score, and that is California. So to all my family that are watching this that are living in California, I'm sorry, you are in the 4th worst state. The 3rd worst state, so number 48, has an affordability rank of 47. It's got really good quality and cost of healthcare at number 3, and the well-being rank of 30, and that is Washington. And then we're getting down to the final 2 here of the worst states. So with the 49th worst affordability, the 32nd healthcare, but they do have a well-being rank at number 4, and a weather rank of 37. That is New York. And the worst state. So if you're planning on moving to this next state, then based on this list, you should, I guess, rethink that. But if you're like most people, you're going to look at this list and kind of go, hey, that's where I live or where I plan on living. They got it wrong. But with an affordability rank of 41, a quality and cost of healthcare at 44, a weather rank of 50, and a crime rank of 49. In all honesty, I thought this would be, I didn't anticipate this being the state, but it is Alaska as the worst state to retire. And so now we switch over to the best. So if these are your 5 that you're moving to or you're thinking about, well, maybe switch with one of these other ones. So the top 5. So number 5, we're going to go from 5 to 1. So the 5th state that is got an affordability rank of 9 and does have a crime rank of 42. So that's a little higher. That is Missouri, coming in at 5. Number 4 has an affordability rank of 17. A crime rank of 46. So if they rank crime a little higher, my guess would these be towards the bottom. South Carolina. We've got number 3 has an affordability rank of 5. The cost and quality of healthcare is 32, but it does have a well-being rank of 42. And somehow it ended up at number 3, and that is Georgia. Number 2. Let's see, number 2. This is your most affordable place to retire. However, it does have the worst quality and cost of healthcare. And so that is number 2, West Virginia. And the final number 1 place that is got a 20 on the affordability rank, a 39 in healthcare, but its well-being is a 2, and it's got pretty good weather at number 8 is Delaware. So those are the states that are apparently the best for you to retire compared to the ones that are worst. And my guess is that you're probably thinking about moving somewhere that might even be on that list. And if you do, good, enjoy it. This is, I think it's something that I like to see what these ranks are based off of. But it's funny because when I look at these, personally, I probably wouldn't retire in any of the top 5. But that's just because I was born and raised in California and I live in Texas now. So, but that's just me. So this was fun. I appreciate everybody joining. Like I said, we're going to do this weekly. We're just from wherever I'm at. And in all honesty, next week, I'm actually going to be remote. So we're going to do this, not in our studio, but we're going to do this on the road. So it'll be a little bit more, we'll see how that goes. If you have questions, reach out to us. If you have any topics you want us to touch on, let us know. We're here. We're looking forward to, continuing this conversation, this dialogue, have this going every single week, 4 p.m. Central Time. Do me a favor, hit that button, subscribe, make sure you're joining us every single week. And I'm glad this hopefully went well. We'll see how this goes. It's supposed to be fun, and I appreciate you all joining.